Picture this. You sit alone. The quiet hum of a clock marks each passing second, a subtle heartbeat echoing the rhythm of a life quietly unraveling. Familiar shadows gather around you. Empty bottles, glowing screens, credit cards worn thin from impulsive buys, remnants of choices that once promised relief, excitement, or escape. Each object whispers its silent accusation, a reminder of moments you'd rather forget, yet here you are again. Your heart quickens at the mere thought of another fix, another binge, another swipe, another sip. Anticipation builds, overshadowing the inevitable regret that follows. You know the cycle intimately, the thrill, the temporary peace, the hollow aftermath. Still, you persist, drawn inexplicably toward what you consciously know harms you. How can something that brings pain also offer such profound comfort? This paradox gnaws at the edge of your awareness, a quiet contradiction you rarely dare to examine directly. Confronting it fully would mean acknowledging a terrifying truth. You're willingly choosing something that diminishes your joy, erodes your health, sabotages your dreams. But why? On the surface, your choices defy logic. You've promised yourself countless times, "This is the last time," yet those promises shatter like fragile glass against the undeniable pull of temptation. Two voices battle within you, one rational, pleading for freedom, and the other raw, primal, craving immediate satisfaction. Consequences be damned. You might view this as weakness, a personal failing. Society certainly judges harshly from the outside. Yet what if the issue runs deeper? What if the root of this self-sabotaging cycle isn't a lack of willpower, but something profoundly embedded within the fabric of the human psyche? Something universal, ancient, and tragically misunderstood. What if choosing what hurts isn't a flaw, but rather a distorted attempt at healing? Could addiction, in all its forms, whether substances, shopping, gambling, scrolling, be not the core issue but a symptom, a signal, a desperate message from the hidden corners of your being? Consider the sheer absurdity of your behavior. You know exactly how this ends, yet you rush toward it eagerly, again and again, as if trapped within a twisted script, written long before you learn to question it. Pain itself has somehow become comforting, familiar ground, safer than facing what lies beneath. In the quiet depths, you rarely dare explore. But what awaits you in those depths? Is it an unresolved past? A shadow self you're afraid to meet? A truth too painful to acknowledge? Or could it be something even more elusive? An existential hunger, a longing for something you cannot name. This isn't merely about substances or compulsions. It's about every destructive habit that holds you captive, every repeated action you recognize as harmful, yet find yourself unable to abandon. This paradox reveals something vital. Addiction isn't just about wanting too much. It's about wanting the wrong things, driven by invisible forces you're only beginning to glimpse. So ask yourself, why do you keep reaching for poison, knowing full well the taste? Why does suffering become seductive? Why, in moments of clarity, do you still choose chains over freedom? You aren't alone in this. The world around you is filled with people quietly locked in similar battles, all struggling to understand their mysterious attraction to pain, to patterns they despise yet cannot abandon. Understanding this paradox might not just explain your behavior, it could illuminate something fundamental about human nature itself. But to understand it fully, you'll have to venture deeper. Behind this paradox lies an unsettling truth, one philosophers, psychologists, and thinkers have grappled with for centuries. A truth challenging your understanding of freedom, willpower, and self-control. To confront it means stepping beyond judgment, beyond shame, beyond the simple binary of good and bad. It means asking the uncomfortable question, underpinning everything. What hidden force compels you to choose what destroys you? And why is it so hard to resist? The answer is waiting. But first, you must be brave enough to look. To truly understand why we repeatedly choose what harms us, we must journey deeper, beyond simple explanations, into the shadows of our psyche, where psychology and philosophy intertwine. Carl Jung once spoke of the shadow, an unconscious part of our personality, where hidden fears, desires, and insecurities reside. Jung believed that ignoring or suppressing these shadow elements only strengthened their influence. In addiction, the shadow often manifests as an unconscious rebellion against the demands of the conscious self, an attempt to break free, even destructively, from rigid control and expectations. Consider how addiction provides temporary escape from reality's constraints. When you succumb to temptation, you're not just seeking pleasure, you're momentarily stepping away from the weight of responsibility, judgment, and anxiety. For that brief moment, you're free. Yet this freedom comes at a profound cost, chaining you deeper into dependence. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who famously declared, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster," also said, "And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you." Addiction can be viewed through this lens, an abyss of repeated choices that initially provide relief or excitement, but soon stare back, consuming the one who gazes into it. Nietzsche further explored the concept of the will to power, suggesting our fundamental drive is not merely survival, but an assertion of our existence and significance. Addiction, paradoxically, can become a distorted expression of this will, a desperate bid for autonomy and control in a world where we feel powerless. The addict chooses harm because, in the twisted logic of addiction, the act of choosing itself feels like power. Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophy adds another dimension, emphasizing human life as an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. To Schopenhauer, the pursuit of pleasure inevitably leads to suffering, because satisfaction is temporary. Addiction embodies this cycle vividly. Each hit, each drink, each gamble temporarily fills a void, but soon after, the emptiness returns, deeper than before, creating a relentless craving that traps us in perpetual longing and pain. Aldous Huxley's dystopian novel, Brave New World, illustrates how addiction serves as a societal tool to numb pain and maintain control. Huxley's prophetic vision saw humanity willingly sedated by substances and distractions, avoiding the discomfort of genuine emotion and introspection. Similarly, your personal addictions might serve as mechanisms to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself, your life, and your inner world. You choose pain, not for pain's sake, but because facing the truth might feel even more terrifying. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, spoke about bad faith, the human tendency to deceive oneself to avoid the burden of freedom and responsibility. Addiction is a profound form of bad faith. By repeatedly engaging in self-destructive behaviors, you abdicate responsibility for your life's direction, placing blame on substances, circumstances, or fate. Yet deep down, you know this is an evasion. The real terror isn't the substance or compulsion. It's the existential burden of being truly free and accountable for your life. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, asserted that humanity's primary drive is the pursuit of meaning. When we fail to find meaning in our lives, we turn instead to distraction and short-term pleasures. Addiction, from Frankl's perspective, signals a deeper existential emptiness, a desperate attempt to fill the void left by meaninglessness. Each harmful choice, though destructive, momentarily numbs the ache of living a life devoid of deeper purpose. These philosophical and psychological perspectives reveal a deeper truth. Addiction is not merely a flaw or weakness, but a distorted reflection of fundamental human drives and desires. You aren't simply pursuing pain, you're seeking escape, power, comfort, and meaning, albeit through a tragically misguided path. This understanding shifts the narrative from blame to curiosity, from judgment to compassion. The paradox isn't simply about choosing pain over pleasure. It's about unconsciously navigating complex emotional and existential needs. These hidden needs, if left unaddressed, remain powerful puppeteers behind the scenes of your life. To break free, you must first recognize the puppeteer. You must illuminate the shadow, confront the abyss, embrace responsibility, and courageously seek genuine meaning. But before that liberation can happen, you need to face the unseen consequences of these hidden forces, consequences that ripple silently through every part of your existence. The hidden forces driving your addictive behaviors don't merely influence isolated moments. They silently reshape your entire life, altering every choice, relationship, and feeling, often without your conscious awareness. One of the most insidious consequences is the gradual erosion of self-trust. Every promise broken, every resolution abandoned, leaves a subtle scar. Over time, these scars accumulate, forming a barrier between you and your authentic self. Eventually, you become estranged from your own integrity, unsure whether you can trust even your simplest intentions. The inner voice of doubt grows louder, drowning out confidence and clarity. Addiction also corrodes relationships. Initially, you might think your harmful habits are personal struggles, affecting only yourself. But addiction is rarely solitary. Its ripples spread outward, touching family, friends, colleagues, anyone close enough to care. Promises made to loved ones are frequently broken, leading to frustration, disappointment, and distance. What begins as subtle fractures can widen into chasms of resentment and isolation. In social circles, addiction often wears a mask. You might present yourself as fine, capable, even successful. Yet behind closed doors, you're collapsing under hidden weight. The constant stress of maintaining appearances can exhaust you emotionally, further driving you toward harmful habits for relief. The facade becomes another addictive pattern, one where authenticity and genuine connection become increasingly rare. On a neurological level, addiction rewires your brain, transforming fleeting pleasures into powerful compulsions. Neuroscience reveals how repeated exposure to addictive substances or behaviors releases dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, reinforcing harmful patterns. Over time, the brain adapts, diminishing pleasure from healthy activities and increasing reliance on addictive stimuli. Life itself becomes dull without the addictive element, perpetuating the cycle. Cognitive biases amplify these consequences. The sunk cost fallacy keeps you trapped, convincing you that since you've already invested so much time, energy, identity, you can't turn back. Confirmation bias makes you seek evidence that your harmful habits aren't truly problematic, selectively ignoring signs of damage. These mental traps reinforce the illusion that your addiction isn't so severe, even as your life quietly unravels. Culturally, addiction is often misunderstood, stigmatized, or normalized. Society alternately condemns addiction harshly or trivializes it, portraying it either as moral failure or as harmless fun. These narratives deepen your confusion and shame, making it harder to seek help or acknowledge the gravity of your situation. They isolate you further, making addiction not just a personal struggle, but a societal trap. Moreover, addiction subtly transforms your perception of time. You live in extremes, the urgent present moment and the vague, distant future. Immediate gratification constantly overrides long-term goals, weakening your ability to plan, dream, and build a coherent future. Days blend into cycles of craving and regret, gradually hollowing out your vision of what's possible. Spiritually and existentially, addiction obscures your deeper purpose. Viktor Frankl highlighted that meaningful living is humanity's fundamental need. Yet addiction replaces meaningful pursuits with momentary distraction, leaving an existential void. Over time, you lose touch with what truly fulfills you, settling instead for fleeting satisfaction. Life feels increasingly meaningless, intensifying your reliance on addictive behaviors to numb the resulting despair. These unseen consequences, when fully recognized, become impossible to ignore. They create a profound urgency. Addiction isn't merely a personal flaw, it's a life-consuming pattern shaped by deep psychological, neurological, and societal factors. It touches every aspect of your existence, silently eroding your well-being, your relationships, and your sense of self. Yet understanding these consequences is just the beginning. This awareness calls for more than acknowledgement. It demands action. To break free from this insidious cycle, you must challenge conventional wisdom, question cultural narratives, and confront deeply rooted beliefs. You must ignite a rebellion, a revolution not against external enemies, but against the unseen forces within yourself. It's time to reclaim your life, not just from addiction, but from every hidden influence that quietly dictates your choices. The journey ahead isn't easy, but it's profoundly liberating. Are you ready to begin? To break free from addiction's relentless grip, you must initiate a rebellion, one that defies conventional thinking and courageously challenges deeply ingrained beliefs and patterns. This isn't simply a battle against substances or behaviors. It's a profound transformation of your understanding, your perspective, and your relationship with yourself. First, recognize that rebellion begins internally. It requires you to reject the notion that addiction defines your identity or destiny. You are not your addiction. Instead, view your addictive behaviors as signals, messages from your subconscious, attempting to communicate deeper, unmet needs. Embrace these signals with curiosity rather than shame. Shift your question from, "What's wrong with me?" to, "What am I truly seeking?" Cultivating radical self-awareness becomes your greatest ally in this revolution. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation, journaling, or reflective solitude, enable you to observe your cravings without immediately acting upon them. Viktor Frankl famously said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." Learning to pause in this space grants you the freedom to choose differently, to reclaim your agency moment by moment. Historical examples offer inspiring blueprints for breaking free from destructive patterns. Consider the Stoics, who emphasized living according to personal virtue and inner truth, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius advocated for examining one's inner motivations rigorously. He reminded us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. By anchoring yourself in personal values, rather than external validation or momentary pleasures, you begin to reclaim autonomy and resilience. Another powerful perspective comes from psychologist Carl Rogers, who introduced the concept of unconditional positive regard, the acceptance and support of a person, regardless of their actions or circumstances. Applying unconditional positive regard to yourself means treating your struggles with compassion rather than judgment. Addiction thrives on self-criticism and shame. It withers in the presence of empathy and understanding. Embrace your imperfections. Let them be seen not as failures, but as proof that you are human. Self-compassion dismantles the walls of addiction, brick by brick. Breaking free also involves rebuilding authentic connections. Addiction isolates. Recovery connects. Reach out, honestly, to trusted friends, family members, or support groups. Vulnerability might feel risky, but it forms the foundation for genuine intimacy and healing. By sharing your struggles openly, you remove addiction's power of secrecy and shame. Each honest conversation becomes a rebellious act against isolation and denial, one that forges pathways back to community and belonging. Redefining your relationship with discomfort is equally essential. Society often teaches avoidance of pain, promoting temporary relief over long-term growth. Yet true freedom lies in facing discomfort directly, accepting short-term pain as part of growth rather than something to escape transforms your relationship with addiction. Over time, what once felt intolerable becomes manageable. What once felt like weakness becomes a sign of your strength. This rebellion also demands practical, concrete shifts in daily routines and environments. Identify your triggers, whether people, places, or emotional states, and proactively adjust your surroundings. Replace harmful rituals with healthier alternatives. Gradually build new habits that support rather than sabotage your well-being. Understand that lasting change doesn't erupt overnight. It emerges from consistent, incremental action. Perhaps most profoundly, breaking free involves rediscovering your sense of purpose. Viktor Frankl asserted that the primary human drive is not pleasure, but the pursuit of meaning. Addiction frequently arises from a lack of meaningful direction, filling existential voids with short-term gratifications. Seek out activities, relationships, and goals that resonate deeply with your values and passions. Align your life with a compelling, purpose-driven vision. Replace superficial pleasures with profound fulfillment. Ultimately, this rebellion is about reclaiming power, not the fleeting illusion of control that addiction promises, but genuine empowerment rooted in authenticity, compassion, and purpose. It's a radical shift from victimhood to agency, from compulsion to conscious choice. This path may feel daunting, even frightening. Yet within this rebellion lies an extraordinary opportunity for transformation, a chance to build a life of meaning, connection, and true freedom. You are not merely escaping addiction. You are stepping into a life where each choice aligns authentically with who you are. Are you ready to embrace this revolution and begin rewriting your story? After journeying through hidden struggles, unseen consequences, and courageous rebellion, you arrive at an ultimate truth, a realization so profound it reshapes your entire understanding of addiction, freedom, and life itself. The ultimate truth is this: addiction isn't about substances, compulsions, or cravings. It's about disconnection. At its core, every addictive behavior is a desperate attempt to fill an inner void, one created by a loss of meaningful connection. Disconnection from yourself, disconnection from others, disconnection from life. You've spent years chasing momentary relief, believing that fulfillment exists somewhere outside yourself, in pleasure, in validation, in distraction. But this endless pursuit only widens the gap between your actions and your authentic self, leaving you emptier with every passing attempt. What you've truly been craving isn't pleasure, it's presence. Not numbness, but genuine feeling. Not control, but true connection. This realization changes everything. It liberates you from the belief that addiction is a personal failing or a moral weakness. Addiction is not a character flaw. It's a symptom, a signal that something essential has been lost. When you understand this, your relationship with yourself begins to shift. You no longer see your behavior as broken. You begin to understand it as a courageous, though misguided effort to soothe a deeper pain. Every urge, every slip, every relapse, they become invitations, not to judgment, but to understanding, not to punishment, but to presence. You begin to comprehend that true freedom isn't merely the absence of addiction. It is the presence of meaningful connection. Connection with yourself, rooted in awareness, acceptance, and compassion. Connection with others, built on vulnerability, honesty, and trust. Connection with life, anchored in purpose, aligned with your values, and animated by passion. This truth transforms your priorities. Superficial distractions lose their power. Temporary highs lose their allure. What once felt urgent now feels hollow. What once felt unreachable now feels necessary. You stop performing and start participating. You no longer ask, "How do I look?" or "What do they think?" You begin to ask, "Is this true?" and "Does this matter?" And the more you ask those questions, the more your life starts to realign. Joy becomes quieter, but deeper. Success becomes less about image and more about integrity. Peace becomes not the absence of noise, but the presence of wholeness. This truth is not abstract. It's immediate. It touches every corner of your life. It changes how you wake in the morning and how you rest at night. It changes how you speak to a stranger, how you love your partner, how you forgive yourself. It even changes the silence between your thoughts. And it doesn't stop with you. Because this isn't just your truth. It's a human truth. In a world addicted to distraction, performance, and external validation, your choice to reconnect becomes revolutionary. Your healing becomes a quiet act of defiance. Your authenticity becomes an invitation for others to do the same. Your journey does not erase pain, but it gives that pain meaning. It doesn't erase your past, but it makes space for a future that belongs entirely to you. And now here you are, awake. You move differently now. You speak differently. You choose differently. Not to impress, but to align. Not to escape, but to live. Addiction no longer defines your story. It simply informs your understanding. It deepens your compassion. It reminds you of what truly matters. This is the final truth, and its power changes everything. You have found your freedom. Now, live it fully.